I never expected Tucson to change my life. Hell, I barely wanted to be here in the first place. The assignment seemed straightforward enough. National Geographic wanted photographs of ancient petroglyphs hidden in the Sonoran Desert, something about preserving cultural heritage before development destroyed everything. After my messy breakup with Sarah in New York, isolation sounded perfect. The heat hit me like a wall when I stepped off the plane. Even in late spring, Arizona felt like standing inside an oven. I grabbed my camera gear, headed straight to my rental car, eager to lose myself in work. My hotel room overlooked the desert mountains, all burnt orange and purple shadows, beautiful but lonely, just like I wanted. The next morning, I drove to Desert Springs Ranch to scout potential horseback routes to the petroglyph sites. The place looked like something from a Western movie, all weathered wood and adobe buildings surrounded by endless saguaro cacti. That's when I first saw her. A woman with chestnut hair was leading a magnificent bay horse across the courtyard, moving with the kind of confidence that made you stop and stare. She wore dusty jeans and a simple white tank top, but something about the way she carried herself screamed competence and grace. Our eyes met for maybe 3 seconds. Blue eyes, like desert sky after rain. She looked away first, focusing on her horse, but I caught the slight blush coloring her cheeks. "Can I help you?" Her voice held a slight southwestern drawl. "I'm looking for riding lessons. I'm Vanessa Jenkins, photographer. Molly Thomas, I run the equestrian program here." We shook hands. Her grip was firm, calloused from years of handling reins and ropes. "Never ridden before?" "Not since summer camp. It's been a while." She smiled then, transforming her serious expression into something warm and inviting. "We'll start easy. Tomorrow morning, 6 a.m. Desert's too hot later." I agreed, though I wasn't sure if it was for the photography project or just to see her again. That evening, I wandered through downtown Tucson, trying to distract myself from thoughts of blue eyes and easy smiles. The Arizona History Museum caught my attention, advertising a special exhibit on Apache culture. Inside, I joined a small tour group gathered around an elderly curator discussing warrior traditions. The guide's passion for local history was infectious, and I found myself genuinely engaged for the first time in months. "These petroglyphs represent spiritual journeys," she explained, gesturing toward ancient rock art photographs. "Each symbol tells a story of connection between earth and sky." That's when I noticed her again. Molly stood near the back of the group, listening intently. She'd changed into a sundress that showed off toned arms and shoulders. When she caught me staring, she didn't look away this time. After the tour ended, we found ourselves walking toward the exit together. "Small world," she said. "Or small town. Tucson's bigger than you think, full of surprises." We paused outside the museum entrance, neither wanting to end the conversation. "There's a coffee shop around the corner," she offered hesitantly. "I'd like that." We talked for 2 hours about everything and nothing. She told me about growing up on ranches, about her love for horses and wide-open spaces. I shared stories about traveling for photography, about capturing moments that told larger truths. "What brought you to Arizona?" she asked. "Work. And maybe running away from some things." I understand running away. Something in her voice suggested she knew more about escape than she was saying. When we finally parted ways, she reminded me about our morning lesson. 6 a.m. sharp. Don't be late. Wouldn't dream of it. Walking back to my hotel, I realized I hadn't thought about Sarah or New York once during our conversation. For the first time in months, I felt curious about tomorrow instead of dreading it. Maybe Tucson had more to offer than just ancient rocks and desert silence. 5:30 a.m. came too early, but I was already awake anyway. Nerves, maybe? Or excitement. Hard to tell the difference anymore. The ranch looked different in pre-dawn light, all silver shadows and quiet promise. Molly was waiting in the stable yard, holding 2 steaming coffee cups and looking impossibly put together for someone who'd been up since probably 4 a.m. "Thought you might need this," she said, handing me coffee that tasted like liquid heaven. "You're a lifesaver. Just practical. Can't have you falling off on our first lesson." She led me to a gentle mare named Luna, all patient brown eyes and steady temperament. While Molly saddled the horses, I watched her hands work with practiced efficiency, every movement economical and sure. "Tell me about your photography," she said, adjusting my stirrups. "What makes you want to capture something?" "The story behind the surface. People see a landscape, I see the history, the secrets." "And what secrets does Arizona hold for you?" The question caught me off guard, still figuring that out. We started with basic commands, walking Luna around the corral, while Molly called out instructions. Her teaching style was patient but direct, correcting my posture and grip without making me feel incompetent. "Relax your shoulders. She can feel your tension." Easy for you to say. You've been doing this your whole life. Not my whole life. Just since I was 3. That made me laugh, and somehow laughing made everything easier. My body started moving with Luna's rhythm instead of fighting it. "Better," Molly said, mounting her own horse effortlessly. "Ready to try the trail?" We rode out into the desert as sunrise painted the mountains gold and orange. The silence felt different on horseback, more complete somehow, like the desert was sharing its secrets with us. "It's beautiful out here," I said. "Most people find it too empty, too harsh. They're not looking close enough." Molly glanced at me with something like approval. "That's what I've always thought." We talked about her work training horses, about the satisfaction of building trust with an animal that could easily overpower you. I told her about capturing that perfect moment when light and subject aligned to tell a truth that words couldn't express. "Sounds lonely, traveling all the time," she said. "Sometimes. But freedom has its price, right? Does it?" Something in her tone made me look at her more carefully. "You sound like you know something about prices." "My family expects certain things. Traditional things." "Like what?" "Marriage, kids, settling down with the right kind of person." The way she said "right kind of person" made my stomach flutter with possibility and fear. "And what do you want?" "That's the question, isn't it?" We'd stopped at a vista point overlooking the entire valley. Tucson spread below us like a promise, all red tile roofs and green golf courses carved from desert floor. "I extended my assignment," I said suddenly. "Told my editor I needed more time to find the perfect locations." "Did you? Need more time, or find the perfect locations?" "Both." I turned to face her fully. "I found something I wasn't expecting." "What's that?" "A reason to stay." The air between us crackled with unspoken possibilities. Molly's cheeks flushed pink, and she looked away toward the mountains. "Vanessa, I know this is complicated. I know we barely know each other, but I can't pretend I don't feel something here. I feel it too." 3 simple words that changed everything. We rode back to the ranch in comfortable silence, but the tension had shifted from nervous energy to something much more dangerous. When we reached the stable, our hands brushed while unsaddling Luna, and neither of us pulled away. "Same time tomorrow?" she asked. "Wouldn't miss it." But we both knew we weren't just talking about riding lessons anymore. That afternoon, I called my editor and officially extended my stay another 2 weeks. He wasn't thrilled, but my work spoke for itself. I had the luxury of time. Time to figure out what was happening between Molly and me. Time to explore this pull I felt toward someone who seemed to understand the language of wide spaces and hidden truths. Time to discover what secrets Arizona really held for me. That evening, I found myself driving past Desert Springs Ranch, not stopping, just checking, making sure it was real. Making sure she was real. 2 weeks turned into 3. Then 4. My editor stopped asking questions when I sent him the most compelling desert photographs of my career. What he didn't know was that half of them featured Molly in the distance, her silhouette against red rock formations creating compositions that took my breath away. Our riding lessons had evolved into something else entirely, daily adventures that took us deeper into the desert backcountry, to places where ancient peoples had left their marks on stone walls, and modern civilization felt like a distant memory. "There," Molly pointed toward a narrow canyon entrance. "That's where you'll find your petroglyphs." We dismounted and walked the horses through the opening. Inside, the canyon walls rose 50 feet above us, creating a natural cathedral of sandstone and shadow. Ancient symbols covered the rock faces, spirals and figures that seemed to dance in the shifting light. "My ancestors considered this a sacred place," she said quietly. Your ancestors? Quarter Apache on my mother's side. She used to bring me here as a child, before what? Before she died. Cancer, when I was 16. I reached for her hand without thinking. She didn't pull away. I'm sorry. She would have liked you. She always said the desert reveals people's true nature. What does it reveal about me? Molly turned to face me, her blue eyes serious. That you see beauty in unexpected places. That you're not afraid of empty spaces or difficult truths. And what about you? What does it reveal? That I've been hiding from myself for a long time. We were standing close now, close enough that I could see the gold flecks in her eyes, smell the desert sage in her hair. The canyon walls seemed to lean in around us, creating a pocket of intimacy in the vast wilderness. Molly, I know what this is, she whispered. I know what I'm feeling, and it terrifies me. Why? Because my family would never understand. Because this town talks. Because I've never felt this way about anyone before. Man or woman. Anyone. The honesty in her voice made my heart race. Then we figure it out together. I cupped her face in my hands, giving her time to pull away. She didn't. Instead, she leaned into my touch, her eyes fluttering closed. I've never done this before, she breathed. Neither have I. Not like this. Our first kiss was tentative, questioning. Then Molly's arms came around my neck and the kiss deepened, becoming something hungry and desperate and absolutely right. She tasted like coffee and possibilities, like everything I'd been searching for without knowing it. When we finally broke apart, we were both breathing hard. Damn, she whispered. Yeah. We stood there in the sacred canyon, foreheads touching, trying to process what had just shifted between us. The petroglyphs seemed to approve, ancient witnesses to another kind of transformation. What happens now? She asked. Now we see where this goes. But even as I said it, I could see the fear creeping back into her eyes. The weight of expectations and small-town scrutiny settling on her shoulders like a familiar burden. It's not that simple. It can be. Not for me. Not here. I understood. I'd grown up in liberal Boston, lived in New York where nobody cared who you loved as long as you didn't block traffic. Molly's world was different, more complicated, more judgmental. Then we take it slow, I said. Private, just between us for now. Relief flooded her features. You do that? I'd do whatever it takes to explore this thing between us. We rode back to the ranch in contemplative silence, but everything had changed. The air hummed with new awareness, every accidental touch electric with possibility. That evening, Molly texted me an address. If you want to see where I really live. Her cabin sat on 20 acres of scrubland outside town, a small adobe structure surrounded by nothing but desert and sky. It was perfect, isolated, private. Built it myself, she said, leading me inside. Took 3 years. The interior was simple but beautiful, all exposed wooden beams and handmade furniture. Photographs of horses and desert landscapes covered the walls. A stone fireplace dominated one corner, and large windows framed views of the mountains. It's incredible. It's mine. The one place where I don't have to be anyone but myself. We sat on her couch drinking wine and talking about dreams deferred and roads not taken, about the courage it takes to live authentically in a world that demands conformity. I've been thinking about what you said, she admitted, about taking it slow. And maybe slow is overrated. This time, when she kissed me, there was nothing tentative about it. It was fire and intention and the sound of walls crumbling down. We made love that night, surrounded by candlelight and desert silence, exploring each other with the patience of people who understood that some discoveries couldn't be rushed. Molly was beautiful and generous and completely present, giving herself to the moment with the same fearless grace she brought to everything else. Afterward, we lay tangled together listening to coyotes sing in the distance. No regrets? I asked. Only that it took us this long. I kissed the top of her head and held her closer, knowing that whatever came next, this moment was perfect, complete, worth whatever complications tomorrow might bring. The next 3 weeks passed like a beautiful dream I was afraid to wake up from. We developed a routine that felt both thrilling and dangerously natural. Mornings at the ranch for riding lessons that had become elaborate excuses to disappear into the desert together. Afternoons spent at hidden waterholes and secret canyons. Places Molly had discovered during years of solitary rides. "You're glowing," Gianna observed during one of our coffee meetings in town. The museum curator had become something of a mentor during my extended stay, sharing stories about Tucson's hidden history. "Arizona sun?" I deflected. This wouldn't have anything to do with a certain equestrian instructor, would it? My cheeks burned. "What makes you say that?" 20 years of watching people fall in love in this desert. It leaves a particular mark. I studied Gianna's weathered face, searching for judgment. Instead, I found only warmth and understanding. "Is it that obvious?" "Only to someone who's been paying attention, and who happens to care about your happiness. Her family wouldn't understand. Families rarely do at first. But love has a way of teaching patience." That evening, I drove to Molly's cabin with Gianna's words echoing in my mind. I found her on the porch, watching the sunset paint the mountains purple and gold. "Rough day?" I asked, settling beside her on the wooden steps. "Dad called. Wants me to come to dinner Sunday. Meet some rancher's son he thinks would be perfect for me." My stomach tightened. "What did you tell him?" "That I'm busy. And that I'm seeing someone." I held my breath. "Did you tell him who?" "Not yet. But he's pushing harder lately. Something about carrying on the family name, providing grandchildren." The weight of her family's expectations pressed down on both of us like the desert heat. I took her hand, intertwining our fingers. "We don't have to figure everything out tonight. Sometimes I think about just telling them. All of it." "What stops you?" "Fear, cowardice. The knowledge that once those words are spoken, there's no taking them back." I understood. Coming out wasn't a single conversation, but a series of small revolutions, each one requiring courage you weren't sure you possessed. "Whatever you decide, I'm here." She squeezed my hand. "That's what scares me most." "What?" "How much I need you to be here." Later, inside her cabin, we made love with an urgency that felt like desperation, as if we were trying to store up moments against an uncertain future. Molly was passionate and vulnerable, whispering my name like a prayer in the darkness. Afterward, she traced lazy patterns on my shoulder while I listened to her heartbeat slow. "I've been thinking about something," she said. "What's that?" "About not hiding anymore. At least not completely." "Meaning?" "There's a place in town, a bar where people like us go, where we could be ourselves without worrying about who might see." The courage in her voice made my heart swell. "You want to go out? Together? In public?" Terrifying idea, right? Absolutely terrifying. "When do we leave?" She laughed, the sound rich and delighted. "Tomorrow night, if you're sure." "I'm sure about you. Everything else we'll figure out." The next evening, she picked me up at my hotel wearing jeans and a black silk blouse that made her eyes look like sapphires. I'd chosen a sundress and boots, trying to strike a balance between feminine and practical. "You look beautiful," she said, and the way she looked at me made me feel beautiful. The bar was called Mirage, tucked into a converted adobe house on the south side of town. Inside, it felt like a sanctuary. Women of all ages laughed and danced and held hands without fear. For the first time since arriving in Arizona, I saw Molly completely relaxed. "Better than hiding in the desert?" I asked as we claimed a corner table. "Different, but yes, better." We danced to slow songs and fast ones, pressed close together on the small dance floor. Molly moved with the same fluid grace she brought to everything, leading me through steps I didn't know with patient confidence. "I could get used to this," I murmured against her ear. "Dancing? Being with you in public, not having to look over our shoulders. Maybe someday we won't have to come to places like this. Maybe someday everywhere will feel this safe. Maybe someday isn't so far away." We stayed until closing, reluctant to return to the world of secrets and careful distances. In the parking lot, Molly kissed me under the neon sign, bold and unapologetic. "Thank you," she said. "For what?" "For making me brave." Driving back to her cabin, windows down and desert air rushing through her truck, I felt something shifting between us. We'd crossed another threshold, claimed another piece of authenticity in a world that didn't always welcome it. That night, we made love with a different energy, celebratory, hopeful. Like we were writing the first chapter of a story we finally believed might have a happy ending. "I love you," she whispered in the pre-dawn darkness. "I love you too." 3 words that changed everything. Again. The phone call came on a Tuesday morning while I was reviewing photographs at the hotel. "Is this Vanessa Jenkins, the photographer?" "Yes, who's this?" "Elena Rodriguez, environmental lawyer. I need to meet with you. Today." Something in her voice made me pay attention. "What about?" "Your petroglyph project. There are things you need to know." We met at a coffee shop downtown, away from the tourist areas. Elena was sharp-eyed and intense, the kind of woman who got things done through sheer force of will. "Those sites you've been photographing," she said without preamble. "They're in danger." "What kind of danger?" "Mining. Copper extraction. A company called Thomas Mining Corporation has permits to start operations next month." My blood went cold. "Thomas? You know the name?" I thought about Molly's last name, about the family pressure she'd mentioned. "Maybe? Tell me more." Elena spread photographs across the table, aerial shots of pristine desert marked with surveyor stakes and heavy equipment. The canyon where Molly and I had first kissed was clearly visible in one image, tagged for destruction. They're claiming the sites have no historical significance. But we know better. "What do you need from me?" "Documentation. Your photographs could be crucial evidence for our injunction." "Will you help us?" "Of course." That afternoon, I called Molly with news about joining the Environmental Coalition. Her silence stretched so long I thought we'd been disconnected. "Molly? You there?" "I'm here, just processing." "What's wrong?" "I thought you'd be happy about protecting those places." "I am. It's just complicated." "How complicated?" Another pause. "My father owns Thomas Mining Corporation." The words hit me like a physical blow. Richard Thomas. The man whose company was planning to destroy everything we'd held sacred. "Vanessa? Say something." "I don't know what to say." "Neither do I." We met at her cabin that evening, the tension between us thick as desert heat. Molly looked exhausted, like she'd been fighting battles all day. "How long have you known?" I asked. "About the mining?" "I found out this morning when Elena's office called our house looking for property records." "And you didn't think to mention your father was Richard Thomas?" "We're estranged. Have been for years. I use my mother's maiden name professionally. But you knew he owned mining companies." "I knew he was in extractive industries. I didn't know the details." I wanted to believe her, but doubt crept in like poison. "This whole time you've known I was photographing those sites." "Yes. And you never mentioned your father's business interests?" "It didn't seem relevant. We don't talk." "It's relevant now." Molly sat heavily on her couch, head in her hands. "I know how this looks." "How does it look?" "Like I was using you. Like this whole relationship was some kind of setup." The thought had crossed my mind, much as I hated to admit it. "Was it?" She looked up at me with such raw pain that my doubt wavered. "How can you even ask that?" "Because your father's company is about to destroy places that mean everything to both of us, and you conveniently forgot to mention the connection." "Conveniently? There's nothing convenient about any of this." We stared at each other across a chasm that felt impossible to bridge. Everything that had felt pure and simple between us was now tangled with family loyalty and corporate greed. "What happens now?" she asked. "I don't know. Elena needs those photographs. People need to know what's at stake." "And us?" "I don't know that either." The next morning, I met Elena at the coalition office. Other activists had joined us, passionate people committed to protecting desert heritage from corporate destruction. "These images are perfect," Elena said, reviewing my photographs. "They show clearly that the sites contain significant archaeological materials." "How strong is your case?" "With this evidence, very strong. We can definitely get a temporary restraining order." I thought about Molly, about the conflict this would create with her father, about the choice she'd have to make between family money and her conscience. "There's something you should know," I said. Molly Thomas, the woman who's been guiding me to these sites. Her father is Richard Thomas. Elena's eyebrows shot up. The CEO? Yes. But they're not close. Still, this could be a problem. Defense lawyers will claim bias, conspiracy. She didn't know about the permits. Can you prove that? I realized I couldn't. Everything between Molly and me had been built on trust and intimacy, not documentation and evidence. That evening, I drove to her cabin uncertain what I'd find. Her truck was there, but the lights were off. I found her sitting on the porch in darkness, staring at the mountains. Elena filed for the restraining order today, I said. I know. Dad called. What did he say? That I was consorting with environmental terrorists, that I'd betrayed the family. What did you tell him? That maybe the family needs betraying. Something in her voice made me look at her more carefully. There was a different quality to her stillness, like she'd reached some internal decision. Molly? I want to help. Help how? Testify. Provide evidence. Whatever it takes to stop him. That would mean choosing you over him. Choosing what's right over what's profitable. Are you sure? She stood and walked to me, taking my hands in hers. I've never been more sure of anything. The next morning brought consequences neither of us was prepared for. I woke at Molly's cabin to the sound of gravel crunching under heavy tires. Through the bedroom window, I saw a black SUV pulling into her driveway, followed by a second vehicle. Molly. I shook her gently. Someone's here. She sat up, instantly alert. Shit. That's my father's car. Now? It's barely 7 a.m. He doesn't do social calls. We dressed quickly, but there wasn't time to hide the obvious. 2 coffee cups on the nightstand, my clothes scattered across her bedroom floor, the unmistakable intimacy of a shared morning. Richard Thomas didn't wait for an invitation. He strode through Molly's front door like he owned the place, followed by 2 men in expensive suits who had lawyer written all over them. He was tall and imposing, with steel gray hair and cold eyes that took in every detail of the scene. His gaze lingered on me with undisguised hostility. Margaret. He used Molly's full name like a weapon. We need to talk. It's Molly. And whatever you have to say, you can say in front of Vanessa. The photographer. His voice dripped contempt. The one filling your head with environmental nonsense. The one who showed me what you're planning to destroy. I'm planning to create jobs, revenue, economic growth for this community. By bulldozing sacred sites. By utilizing natural resources. Something your mother never understood either. The mention of Molly's mother hit like a slap. I saw her flinch, watched old wounds reopen. Don't you dare bring her into this. She filled your head with romantic notions about desert spirituality. Look where it got her. She died of cancer, you bastard. She died poor and idealistic. Is that what you want? To end up like her? One of the lawyers stepped forward. Mr. Thomas, perhaps we should focus on the legal matter. Richard nodded curtly. The restraining order has been filed. We know you provided information to the Environmental Coalition. Information that was already public record. Don't play naive, Margaret. You guided this woman to protected sites. You helped her build a case against my company. Your company that you never told me existed. My company that pays for this land, this cabin, your precious horses. The implication hung heavy in the desert air. Everything Molly had built, everything she valued, was connected to money earned from the kind of exploitation she was now fighting against. I can give it all back, she said quietly. You can and you will, unless you distance yourself from these people immediately. These people are fighting for something that matters. These people are using you to get to me. Can't you see that? He turned his attention to me, and I felt the full force of his corporate intimidation tactics. Miss Jenkins, your assignment in Arizona was supposed to end weeks ago, yet here you remain. My work required additional time. Your work, or your manipulation of my daughter? Nobody's manipulating anyone. Really? Isn't it convenient that a photographer documenting petroglyphs just happened to befriend the daughter of the man planning to mine those exact locations? The accusation hit home because I'd wondered the same thing myself. Was our connection real, Or had circumstances pushed us together for reasons that had nothing to do with love? It wasn't like that, Molly said, but her voice lacked its usual confidence. Wasn't it? Think about the timeline, Margaret. She shows up just as the permits are being finalized. She extends her stay indefinitely. She gets close to you, gains access to information about our family business. Stop. She's been playing you from the beginning. That's not true. But even as I said it, I could see doubt creeping into Molly's eyes. Richard sensed the opening. How much do you really know about her? About why she came here? About what she was told before she arrived? Enough, Molly said, but her voice was barely a whisper. Do you know she met with Elena Rodriguez before she ever took her first writing lesson with you? My blood turned to ice. That wasn't true, but I couldn't prove it without revealing details about my investigation that would only make things worse. That's a lie. Is it? Check her phone records. Check her emails. See how long this environmental coalition has been planning their campaign. Molly looked at me with growing uncertainty. Vanessa? I met Elena after I'd already been seeing you for weeks, after I'd already fallen in love with you. But you did meet with her before telling me about the mining permits. By one day, maybe two. Maybe you should leave, Molly said quietly. What? I need to think. I need to figure out what's real and what's manipulation. Molly, please. Don't let him do this to us. But she was already retreating, physically and emotionally. I could see her building walls, protecting herself from what felt like betrayal from all sides. Smart girl, Richard said with satisfaction. Blood is thicker than environmental activism. Get out, Molly told him. All of you. Just get out. But the damage was done. As Richard and his lawyers left, I knew something fundamental had shifted between us. Trust, once broken, was nearly impossible to repair. I should go too, I said. Molly nodded without looking at me. Yeah, you should. Driving back to town, I felt like I was leaving pieces of my heart scattered across the desert floor. Everything that had felt certain and beautiful was now tainted with doubt and suspicion. Richard Thomas had won this round, but the fight wasn't over. The next 2 weeks were hell. I threw myself into the environmental case with Elena's coalition, working 18-hour days to document every sacred site that would be destroyed by Richard Thomas's mining operation. My photographs became weapons in a legal war I never wanted to fight. These images are compelling, Elena said, spreading my latest prints across the conference table. They'll definitely strengthen our position for the permanent injunction. Good. When do we go to court? Next month. But there's a problem. What now? Thomas Mining has filed a countersuit. They're claiming harassment, trespassing, and interference with lawful business operations. Based on what? Your relationship with Molly Thomas. They're arguing the entire case is built on illegally obtained information. My stomach clenched. That's ridiculous. Maybe, but it's effective. Defense lawyers are claiming you seduced the CEO's daughter to gain access to proprietary business plans. I fell in love with her before I knew who her father was. Can you prove that? The question haunted me. How do you prove the authenticity of feelings? How do you document the moment two hearts recognize each other? I have photographs, dated images showing our relationship developed over time. That helps, but what we really need is Molly's testimony. She's not speaking to me. Then make her speak to you. That evening, I drove past Desert Springs Ranch for the 10th time in 2 weeks. Molly's truck wasn't there. It was never there anymore. Gianna found me at the coffee shop the next morning, staring into my untouched latte. You look terrible, she observed, sliding into the opposite chair. Thanks. Just what I needed to hear. What happened with Molly? I told her everything. Richard's accusations, Molly's doubts, the way our perfect love story had collapsed into something ugly and suspicious. And you believe he's right? That your feelings weren't real? No. But I understand why she might think that. Do you? The timing was convenient, too convenient. Even I can see how it looks. Gianna studied me with those wise eyes that had seen decades of human drama play out in the desert. You know what I think? What? I think you're both scared. And fear makes people believe terrible things about the ones they love most. She won't see me, won't take my calls. Then stop trying to talk and start showing her who you really are. How? The same way you showed her in the beginning, through your work, through your passion for truth. That afternoon, I drove to Molly's cabin one last time. Her truck was there, but she didn't answer the door. I left a package on her porch, prints of every photograph I'd taken of her over the past months, images that captured her strength, her beauty, her connection to the desert she loved. On the back of the final photograph I wrote, "This is what I see when I look at you. This is what I fell in love with, not your father's secrets, you." Days passed with no response. The legal case moved forward. Elena was confident we'd win the injunction, but corporate lawyers were making the process as ugly as possible. They questioned my credibility, my motives, my relationship with Molly in depositions that felt like character assassination. "They're trying to discredit you personally," Elena explained, after a particularly brutal session. "If they can paint you as a seductress who manipulated their CEO's daughter, they undermine our entire case." So what do? We prove them wrong. We show that your work speaks for itself, regardless of personal relationships. But I knew it wasn't enough. Without Molly's testimony, without her voice confirming that our relationship was real and that her help was freely given, we were fighting with one hand behind our backs. Then, 3 days before the hearing, everything changed. My phone rang at 6 a.m., unknown number. "Vanessa? It's Molly." My heart stopped. "Molly. I need to see you. Can you meet me at the canyon? The one where we first—" "I'll be there in an hour." I found her sitting on the red sandstone ledge where we'd shared our first kiss, staring at the ancient petroglyphs that had brought us together. She looked thinner, more fragile, like the past weeks had cost her as much as they'd cost me. "I got your photographs," she said without preamble. "And they reminded me of something I'd forgotten." "What's that?" "How it felt to be seen, really seen. Not as Richard Thomas's daughter or as a commodity in someone else's game, but as myself." She turned to face me then, and I saw tears in her blue eyes. "I've been an idiot." "No, you haven't. You've been protecting yourself from the wrong person." "My father came by again yesterday." "What did he want?" "To make sure I understood the consequences of testifying, to remind me that everything I have comes from him." "What did you tell him?" "That everything I have isn't worth anything if I can't live with myself." Hope fluttered in my chest like a caged bird finding an open door. "Molly, I want to testify. I want to tell the truth about what those sites mean, about why they need protection. Even if it costs you everything, especially then." She reached for my hand, and I let her take it. "I'm sorry I doubted you. I'm sorry I let his poison get between us. I'm sorry too, for not being completely honest about the timeline, about Elena's contact. Were you using me? Never. But I should have told you everything from the beginning." We sat in silence, watching desert light play across ancient symbols that had survived countless storms. "Can we try again?" she asked. "I'd like that." "Good. Because I have something else to tell you." "What?" "I love you. And I'm done hiding from that." The courthouse steps felt like a battlefield on the morning of the hearing. Media crews lined the sidewalk, environmental activists held signs reading "Protect Sacred Sites," and corporate lawyers in expensive suits moved through the crowd with military precision. In the middle of it all, Molly stood beside me, her hand steady in mine despite the chaos around us. "You sure about this?" I asked one last time. "Never been more sure of anything." Elena approached with final instructions. "Remember, stick to the facts. Don't let them provoke you into emotional responses." "What about their character attacks?" "Let them come. The truth has a way of speaking for itself." Inside, the courtroom felt sterile and intimidating. Richard Thomas sat with his legal team, his face a mask of corporate composure. When his eyes met mine, I saw cold calculation. When they shifted to Molly, I saw something like grief. "All rise for the Honorable Judge Martinez." The proceedings began with Elena presenting our case. My photographs filled the courtroom on large screens, showing pristine desert landscapes and ancient petroglyphs in breathtaking detail. These sites represent thousands of years of cultural heritage, Elena argued. Once destroyed, they can never be replaced. Thomas Mining's lead attorney countered with economic arguments and legal technicalities, trying to reduce sacred ground to mineral rights and profit margins. Then came the personal attacks. Your Honor, we contend that this entire case is built on illegally obtained information. The plaintiff's photographer engaged in an intimate relationship with the defendant's daughter for the express purpose of gaining access to confidential business plans. Objection, Elena called. Relevance? Goes to credibility, Your Honor. I'll allow it, but keep it focused. The corporate lawyer turned to me like a predator scenting blood. Miss Jenkins, when did you first contact Elena Rodriguez about this case? After I'd been in Arizona for several weeks. But you knew about the mining permits before that, didn't you? No. You expect this court to believe that you happened to develop a romantic relationship with Mr. Thomas's daughter purely by coincidence? I expect this court to focus on the evidence, not conspiracy theories. Answer the question. Yes, it was coincidence. The kind that happens when two people connect over shared values. Shared values? Or shared goals in opposing my client's lawful business operations? Elena objected again, but the damage was being done. I could see doubt creeping into some faces in the gallery. Then Molly took the stand. She looked beautiful and fierce in her navy dress, her blonde hair pulled back to show the strong line of her jaw. When she raised her right hand to swear her oath, her voice was clear and steady. State your name for the record. Margaret Molly Thomas. And your relationship to the defendant? Richard Thomas is my father. A murmur rippled through the courtroom. The corporate lawyer smiled, sensing an advantage. Miss Thomas, are you romantically involved with the plaintiff's photographer? Yes. And when did this relationship begin? 6 weeks ago. Before or after Miss Jenkins learned about your father's mining permits? Before. How can you be certain? Molly looked directly at me, her blue eyes unwavering. Because I was there. I remember every moment of falling in love with her. The lawyer tried to shake her testimony, but Molly was unbreakable. She described our first meeting at the museum, our early writing lessons, the gradual development of feelings that had nothing to do with corporate secrets or environmental activism. Miss Thomas, you understand that testifying against your father's company could have serious financial consequences for you? Yes. Yet you're willing to risk your inheritance, your livelihood, for what? A romantic relationship? For what's right. For protecting places that can't protect themselves. How convenient that what's right happens to align with your girlfriend's professional interests. Elena stood. Objection. Argumentative. Sustained. But Molly wasn't finished. Your Honor, may I say something? Proceed. My mother brought me to those canyons when I was a child. She taught me that some things are more valuable than money, some places are more sacred than profitable. I'm not testifying because of my relationship with Vanessa. I'm testifying because my mother would be ashamed of me if I didn't. Silence fell over the courtroom. Even Richard Thomas looked shaken. The corporate lawyer tried to recover, but his momentum was broken. Molly had spoken from the heart, and everyone in that room could hear the truth in her voice. When court recessed for lunch, Molly and I found a quiet spot in the courthouse garden. You were incredible in there, I told her. I just told the truth. It was more than that. You were brave. She kissed me then, right there in public view of reporters and lawyers and anyone else who cared to look. I'm done hiding, she said against my lips. That afternoon brought the judge's decision. Judge Martinez was thorough, addressing both the environmental merits and the character attacks. While the court acknowledges questions have been raised about the plaintiff's motives, the evidence speaks clearly. These archaeological sites represent irreplaceable cultural resources that warrant protection under federal law. He granted the permanent injunction. Outside the courthouse, reporters swarmed us with questions. Molly handled them with grace, speaking eloquently about environmental protection and cultural preservation. What about your relationship with your father? One reporter shouted, some relationships survive disagreement, others don't. I hope ours will. But Richard Thomas walked past us without acknowledgement, surrounded by his legal team and corporate handlers. That evening, we celebrated at Elena's office with the rest of the coalition. But the real celebration happened later, back at Molly's cabin under a canopy of desert stars. Any regrets? I asked as we lay tangled together in her bed. Only that it took us this long to get here. Here? Completely honest with each other, completely committed. She propped herself up on one elbow, studying my face in the moonlight streaming through her window. I have something to ask you. What's that? Stay. Not just for another assignment or another month. Stay for good. What about your father, your family? You're my family now, if you want to be. I pulled her down for a kiss that tasted like promises and forever. I want to be. Outside, coyotes sang their ancient songs to the desert night, and everything felt possible. 6 months after the courthouse victory, life had settled into a rhythm I never expected to find. My photographs from the legal case had won a Pulitzer nomination, bringing international attention to desert conservation efforts. More importantly, they'd brought Molly and me the financial independence we needed to build our future together. We'd purchased 20 additional acres adjacent to Molly's original property, creating a sanctuary for rescued horses and a base for my expanding environmental photography work. The irony wasn't lost on me that Richard Thomas's legal fees had inadvertently funded our dreams through the publicity my work received. The mares responding well to treatment, Molly called from the corral where she worked with a horse rescued from neglect. I watched her through my camera lens, capturing the gentle patience she showed every broken thing that found its way to our sanctuary. 6 months of living together had only deepened my appreciation for her strength and compassion. Dinner in an hour? I called back. Perfect. I'm almost finished here. Our domestic routine felt natural now, like we'd been sharing space for years instead of months. Morning coffee on the porch watching sunrise paint the mountains. Afternoon rides through desert trails that belong to us now. Evening conversations that lasted until stars emerged in the vast Arizona sky. The only shadow over our happiness was Richard Thomas. He'd cut Molly off completely after the trial, refusing her calls and returning her letters unopened. The ranch where she'd grown up had been sold to pay legal costs, and mutual friends reported he'd aged dramatically in the months since losing the case. Any word from your father? I asked over dinner. Nothing. Elena says the company's restructuring, laying off half their workforce. I'm sorry. Are you? I'm sorry he chose pride over his daughter. I'm not sorry we won. Molly reached across our small kitchen table to take my hand. I keep thinking he'll come around eventually. Maybe he will. But we both knew some bridges, once burned, couldn't be rebuilt. The sound of gravel crunching outside interrupted our conversation. Molly tensed, recognizing the particular rhythm of her father's truck before I did. Stay here, she said, but I followed her to the porch anyway. Richard Thomas climbed out of his vehicle slowly, like an old man though he was barely 60. The corporate polish had worn away, replaced by rumpled clothes and hollow eyes. Margaret. Dad. They stood 20 feet apart, father and daughter separated by more than physical distance. I came to see the place, he said finally. Why? To understand what you chose over family. Molly's jaw tightened. I chose truth over lies, conscience over convenience. You chose her over me. His gaze shifted to me with familiar hostility, but the fire had gone out of it. I chose love, Molly said simply. Richard studied our joined hands, our matching wedding rings that we bought the previous month in a private ceremony at the courthouse. You married her. Yes. Without telling me. You haven't taken my calls in 6 months. He looked around at our sanctuary, taking in the rescued horses and solar panels and desert garden Molly had planted. Your mother would have liked this place, he said quietly. Yes, she would have. She always said I didn't understand what mattered. It's not too late to learn. For a moment, I thought he might step forward, might try to bridge the chasm between them. Instead, he climbed back into his truck. Take care of yourself, Margaret. You too, Dad. We watched his taillights disappear into desert darkness. Think he'll come back? I asked. Someday. Maybe. That night, we made love with desperate tenderness, holding each other against the possibility of loss and the certainty of change. Molly cried afterward, grieving the father she'd lost and celebrating the life she'd chosen. "No regrets?" I whispered in the darkness. "None. You?" "Only that we can't save everyone we love from their own choices." 2 weeks later, the phone call came at dawn. "Miss Thomas? This is Tucson Medical Center. Your father's been in an accident." We rushed to the hospital to find Richard unconscious in intensive care, machines breathing for him after a single car accident on a desert highway. He was alone, the doctor explained. "Appears he fell asleep at the wheel." Molly sat beside his bed for 3 days, holding his hand and talking to him about horses and desert sunsets and the love that survived even the deepest disappointments. He never woke up. At the funeral, half of Tucson's business community came to pay respects to a man they'd respected, even if they hadn't always liked him. Molly delivered a eulogy that was honest about their conflicts while honoring the parts of him worth remembering. "He taught me to be strong," she said from the podium, even when that strength meant standing against him. Afterward, we scattered his ashes in the desert he'd spent his life trying to conquer, finally giving him the peace with wild places he'd never found in life. "Think he forgave us?" Molly asked as sunset painted the mountains gold. "I think he understood us. Finally." Now, a year later, I watch Molly work with the horses through my camera lens and see something I never expected to capture. Perfect contentment. She looks up, catching me photographing her again, and smiles with the same radiance that stopped my heart in a museum corridor 2 years ago. "What are you thinking about?" she calls. "Forever." Good answer. Tonight, we'll make love under desert stars that have witnessed 1,000 stories of hearts finding their way home. Tomorrow, we'll wake up in each other's arms and choose love again. Some stories end with grand gestures and dramatic declarations. Ours ends with the quiet triumph of 2 women who fought for the right to love each other openly and won. The petroglyphs we saved will outlast us both, but the love we built in their shadow feels just as eternal.